Okay, I think in the interest of time, we'll get started. Can I say a very good evening to everybody, and to those I've not had the pleasure to meet before, and those who don't know me, my name is Steve Veer, and I have the pleasure of being this program year's Program Quality Director for District 91. This year's selection of webinars, it's much more about quality rather than quantity, and we are being very selective and very strategic about the topics that we're selecting for our webinar series throughout the program year. And we felt, bearing in mind the focus that we need to give to hybrid format, whether it be for training or whether it be contests, that we do this one at this point in the program year, bearing in mind we're about to start the contest season. So I'm very grateful for you all coming along this evening. And for me, I always say that Toastmasters offers so much to so many people, whether you're looking to find and perfect your public speaking voice, whether you're looking to become a better leader, or indeed whether you are looking to become the next world champion of public speaking, there is something in it for everybody. And before we start the contest this year, I thought we would start talking about hybrid life. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to host our webinar this evening, our immediate past administration manager from District 91, and delighted to say this year, training manager for the district on my very own program quality team. Please welcome Amy Jones.
Thank you so much, Steve, for that lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to serve with you this year. And good evening to everyone. If you haven't met me before, I'm a member of Worthing Speakers and Sussex Online Speakers. I've been a Toastmaster since 2016, and I'll tell you a little bit more about me in a minute, but I'd love to introduce my fellow panelists. So first up, we've got Chris Boden. And he has been a Toastmaster for many a year, including before District 91 existed. And he actually has won the District 71 International Speech Contest, and he went on to compete in the semi-finals at the international level. He has placed at district level quite a few times. And this year, if you saw the conference, he was our chief contest chair this year. So he made all the magic behind those contests happen. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Next, we have Sam. And Sam Lloyd is a member of 3 clubs. One of them is in the Sussex family that I'm a part of, so Brighton and Hove Speakers, and they are a successful hybrid club. And he's also a member of 2 online clubs as well. And I'm really excited for Sam to join this session and share his experience at the club level and what they're doing with speeches and being honest about the challenges that exist. And finally, I have got Grace Nathan. And if you haven't seen her on a Zoom call hosting something, I would be very surprised. Grace has been all over the place for the last few years, Zoom hosting at every level of contests, helping at training, helping with district events. She is a member of Central London, I believe, is it, Grace? Yeah, Toastmasters. And she is also someone who's served on the conference teams. So this year she was technical lead, and she had, all the interesting new experience of a hybrid contest and conference at the district level. Now, as Steve mentioned, last year I did serve as district administration manager, and I was really challenged as part of the district leadership team to work and see the district coming back in person, but also to bring in that hybrid element to training, to committee meetings for the district, for council meetings. And there were a lot of challenges in doing that. It's quite daunting when you're stepping into a big new leadership role and to also pull all of that off. But I was really grateful to have a lot of support from fellow Toastmasters, and we made it happen, but we learned some lessons along the way. So this program year, what is the situation we're in? If you haven't heard, since Saturday, when we had the District Executive Committee meeting, the decision has been made that for the 2023-2024 program year, all of the area contests in District 91 will be fully online, and the division and district contests will be hybrid. If you have any questions about that, I'd really encourage you to go and speak to your area directors. This is not really the forum to debate on any of that kind of thing, but we, after this, will be providing plenty of resources to help the division and really pull off those contests and make sure our new batch of area directors know what they're doing with online contests. So let's dive right in. We'll talk about contests first. So in the last program year, Chris Boden, you actually competed in hybrid at area and division level, and you were asked to step in and serve after your experiences as Chief Contest Chair. But what did you find that you really saw missing, and what were the resources that people really needed to have organised to pull off a smoother operation for those contests?
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. I did indeed. I competed in a couple of contests last year, the year before, where we were hybrid with, I probably saw the best and the worst of it, between technical issues, some running and logistic issues. I think the main issues I saw which caused the problem were organisational, not being sufficiently organised in advance of the contest, and not having enough people in the know about the organisation. And the second one was technical, which was very much about a failure of audio, which caused a division contest to be completely abandoned and rescheduled a couple of months later. So one thing I will say, and most of the rules apply, the guidance to any contest, whether it's online, in person or hybrid, is get organised in advance. It's not like a huge pile of things to do, but there are things that just have to be done. So my area contest, which I wasn't competing in, but ended up as contest chair for, the area director had a sort of family emergency on the day or the day before, and there weren't enough people who knew what was going on. And that can kind of happen at any event. But if you're organising a contest, either as area director, as contest chair, whatever, make sure that enough people know the drill. And the technical side, I'm going to leave to Grace to talk about later. But fundamentally, use the script. So that's, if you do one thing, use the script. We have now a nicely refined district script for hybrid contests. Can easily be applied to online or in person. Just use the relevant bits, and we still have the older, it's based off the older online and in-person scripts. So above all, more than anything, use the contest script, and it's so easy once you do that.
Great, thank you, Chris. Yes, that script will be getting published in the next week or so. Now we've got the district format for this year sorted. And Sam, I want to hear about your club contest. So, you're a hybrid club, so you did hybrid contests last year. And how did they go, and what were some lessons learned for your club team?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Amy. It's always been really challenging in order to pull it off. I always think that in terms of hosting a meeting in person, you've got certain complexities to that. But then, and an online meeting, some complexities, but then you marry them together, and then suddenly you are putting in so many extra factors. And I really think it's about 2 to 3 times more effort than doing either one of those other formats. So it's a full appreciation to anyone which pulls it off. We do every club meeting hybrid, and we're very lucky to have a dedicated person which is keen on it. Otherwise, to be honest, we frankly wouldn't bother with the effort, because it is a huge amount of effort to undertake. In terms of the contest itself, we've had a pretty good success with them, and it's all a balance with it, and it's a club level, and so it's really great to be able to experiment with things. And that's what we really try and do with them, is not take a bit too seriously on that front, but then also have that rigor to it. We have had some complaints from people which were online to suggest that the events weren't fair and discriminated against them. And I think that's something which is a challenge with these events, is how you get the fairness with them. And it's just a real challenge with the format.
Mm-hmm. So we're not whitewashing this. Hybrid is a challenge for us all. But I think what's really important to remember, if you're not aware, the Toastmasters envision future, and I'm going to pop it here so you can all see it while I say it. So it's to be the first choice provider of dynamic, high value, experiential communication and leadership skills development. And, you know, for me, what Sam's talking about there where they're experimenting, that's part of what we did as Toastmasters before the pandemic, before online, before hybrid. We try new things. So a member might get up and try to use PowerPoint for the first time, or different kind of props for a speech that no one's ever seen used before. So now we're just stepping into 2023 and beyond and coming together to make hybrid work. And I mean, it's my opinion, I think the younger demographic are going to be more attracted by it. But now, Grace, what about you? I want to hear a bit about what you saw last year during sort of that contest phase at different levels. And, you know, my perspective has been that training and meetings are so different from a contest. A contest needs to be a little bit stricter. The camera shouldn't move. It needs to be the same for, you know, every contestant as much as you can. But for meetings where, you know, you want that engagement with the audience throughout a training presentation or a workshop or a council meeting where the chair will refer to people, you need more cameras and more sound to sort of chase it around. So where do you think, you know, focusing back on the contest, did you also see this struggle at different levels? And what are some things that you think could easily be put in place just to help that be a bit smoother?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. An excellent question, Amy. I had the fortunate experience of being involved at contests from club level for my club right through to District 91 at the conference and the contest just in May. There's so many things. I think it's the hybrid standpoint is such a challenge because for starters, you need the right technology, you need the people who know how to use the technology. So I almost think breaking the question down, some of the key things that would be really useful would be making sure that there's enough people who know how to use the technology, testing it ahead of time. So one of the things I learned from my club is that we realized quite late last year that we'd have to make the contest hybrid, and we ended up having probably about over 60% of our judges online. So that already posed the challenge in itself, because the judges needed to hear the people in the room, all the contestants that were in the room, hear them clearly and see them clearly. And things from Wi-Fi, getting the Wi-Fi to run consistently, to making sure that the camera was angled appropriately, the mics were working. Those things, I think, are poor at club level. As you move higher up in the contest ranking, having more than one camera in a room, for example, so that if you do have contestants online, they can see the audience in the room, they can see people's faces and reactions, as well as being able to hear people. So at a contest, I guess it might only matter if your contest chair is not in the room, or if they're online, they need to be able to hear and interact with the different other functionaries as well. So I think it varies. The more technology you have sometimes can also be a curse, but it's useful as you move up in contest level.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you and I have spoken about before, Grace, is when we went online, because we were all learning how to do online contests and online meetings, what has maybe been lost during that period is the understanding of who's really accountable and responsible for a contest. So for when we talk about area level, it's the area director that's accountable, but they should be appointing a contest chair who is responsible for pulling the contest together, working with the chief judge. And they really need the right people to consult to pull everything together, don't they? So I think over the online, the Zoom host will maybe relied on a little bit too much. And what do you think? Do you think it's much more streamlined when the contest chair really takes that driving seat, and you as a Zoom host would be there more to support and consult with them on the technical that they might not be as familiar with?
I think, yeah, that's the ideal situation, being able to be the consultant on the like technical piece, but looking or thinking back to the conference, really probably the best solution is having the contest chair being familiar enough with Zoom at least to make sure that they're online, they can keep track of the contestants, and they could also easily communicate with the Zoom master. I guess it depends whether who's there in person, if it's a hybrid contest, because that would ultimately have an impact. If, for example, the contest chair is online only, then they will be relying on the Zoom master or the Zoom host if the Zoom host happens to be in person and online. So I think it varies per situation, but we've definitely moved a long way from when the pandemic started, and the Zoom host was kind of like the main technical person. If anything technical, even the most simplest thing happened, it was the Zoom host who was the like lead on it, to a nice work between where the contest chair, chief judge, and Zoom host work together quite fluidly in most cases that I've seen.
Thank you, Grace. And I definitely saw, so Grace, another member called Alistair, and Chris really nailed this down in the setup for the conference to make sure it was really smooth and crisp all the way through. So that's a really important takeaway for everyone. Your contest chair, your chief judge, and your Zoom or logistics people need to be really on par, and the contest chair needs to be the one that makes the final call about really how it's going to be run. So then they know that the contestants know what to expect. So yeah, again, just making sure that, you know, there's not too many cooks spoil the broth. So making sure that contest chair is the one that's really setting the tone, but they've got those key members in place to help them with the more technical parts. Now, from after the district finals this year, speaking to all those contestants that had been through every level, hybrid, one of the big things was that a lot of them said it was so important to be prepared. They really saw people who didn't show up for briefings, other contestants, or hadn't really thought. They'd come out of an in-person club or an online club, and they hadn't thought about preparing for the hybrid environment. And we, you know, obviously that's super daunting, especially if they're a new member. So, you know, they've got fantastic speeches to share, and we really want, you know, we want them to, you know, give people who normally win a run for their money. So we have asked another contestant, Dan McGill, to do a little video and give some tips. But Chris, you know, having yourself competed quite a lot in the past, what would be some tips that you would share with people on preparing to go into online, hybrid, whatever format it is?
Yeah, thanks. I think so. Preparation is key in lots of different ways. I think specifically in terms of, it's a fundamental rule of speaking is know your audience. And here your audience is potentially in two places. There's the audience in front of you and there's the audience online. And I've just come back from the Bahamas at the world, and was there for the Toastmasters International Convention, and was in the room watching the World Championship of Public Speaking. It was very interesting. I did not pick the result at all. I was a long way from picking the winners. And I think from talking to people, and some of the feedback is how they were received online versus in the room. In the room, very heavy audience involvement, a lot of interaction with those speakers that I can imagine didn't come through online. So I think as a contestant, you've got to think about it a little bit differently, that you've got these people in front of you and you've got this camera here, and that's another person who will receive your speech, whatever you're doing, differently. So I think there's a little mindset adjustment. I went in humorous speech last year. It's just playing around. I got to division, but I was experimenting, but I was using a PowerPoint presentation and I was an in-person contestant. Don't do that. Just do not do that. I wondered if it would work, and I found out it did not. So, but we live in experiment and have fun. You've got to think differently about how the two audiences will receive your speech. So that's probably my biggest thing in terms of contestants being prepared. And for God's sake, turn up to the briefing, at least show you're interested. Yeah.
What's that one?
Really helps the contest chair out as well.
Yeah. Prepare to fail. I think there's something.
Fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What about you, Sam? Do you agree with Chris? Contestants need to sort of give themselves a bit of time to be prepared, no matter what the format is they're walking into, but especially with the online and hybrid environments.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had the pleasure of competing in a competition in New Zealand in a contest there, remotely from the UK, and involved waking up in the middle of the night in order to do it and partake in it. But amazing that you can do it, but then incredibly challenging to do a humorous speech online when you're unable to get a reaction from the audience and play off them as the same way as people in the room are. It does make it a different challenge, and totally agree with Chris that is where preparation comes in. And I don't know if you can make it completely fair or an equal playing field where I guess it's taking advantage of the benefits of both of the mediums in that way. In a in-person setting, you can take a lot more from the audience, but online you have things where you can play around with your background, you can play around with the lighting and make it a more interactive experience like that. There was a great speaker, which I heard, Jackie Farrow, if you've ever had the pleasure of hearing him speak, which uses all sorts of mood lighting in order to create an effect, which creates so much impact to it. So I think it's taking advantage of both the mediums. I think that's the key.
Thanks, Sam. And Grace, I'm sure you agree as a Zoom host. What are some tips you would give people thinking about competing when it's online and hybrid about making sure they're ready to go with the extra tech in mind?
Yeah. So love this question, because I think we've definitely come a long way since COVID, where I was guilty of this, where not checking your camera angles, for example. So during COVID, kind of get a bit lazy and end up looking down. But obviously, if people are online, they perceive it wrongly, and for obvious reasons, that you're looking down at the camera rather than looking straight at it. So contestants, I would say top tips is contestants checking their actual screen area, their voice projection, their internet connection, that they've updated Zoom. That's a crucial one, because ahead of the contest, you do not want to find out that you're on an old version of Zoom. And I guess general things like audio visual. It's probably quite key. One of the things that people get to take advantage of when they're in person is body language being fully visible. So, for example, now I'm quite aware that I could only kind of see the top bits of my arms like a T-Rex. So I guess in the contest, you want to make sure that enough of your body is visible so you're not giving off the T-Rex approach. So I would say those are the key tips.
I love that, Grace. Thank you very much. Now we're going to dive a bit more into the technical challenges, and I think we touched on before the keeping it really streamlined in the contest, making sure it's about, again, area level, area director appoints a contest chair, they're responsible for the contest, and those other functionaries or people involved are there to be consulted and support the contest chair. And I think there's a really simple checklist in the back of the rule book. If you've never seen it before, you've probably not read the rule book thoroughly enough. So go and have a look at it. It's so helpful. We will be updating those resources, as we pointed out. But again, this is where it comes back to, it feels like a lot of work. But one thing I know I definitely learned being on the district leadership team last year is that I think we're guilty of not asking in advance and asking for enough help. So, for you, Chris, you were brought in quite late in the game to help out with the contests at the district conference this year. But I think we had maybe a half an hour meeting with myself. Pretty sure Grace was there, a couple of the people in the conference team, yourself and the other contest chairs. And that meeting just nailed out all the confusion we'd had about how much tech would we need. And I think what was really key for us then was all of the conference team are quite new. We're quite new Toastmasters, and you'd obviously come from having experience of in-person conferences. So
I'm old, you can say it.
Yeah. You're what? Sorry, what did you say?
I'm old, yeah.
You're not that old. You're just an older member, your member experience. But yeah, so I think that was one key thing is once we'd had that meeting, you were like, I need this to be pulled off. And so then, you know, Grace and the rest of the technical guys were like, oh, okay, so now we know what we need to deliver from that perspective to really make sure the recording will be pulled off, whoever the winner for the international speech ends up being, that every judge can hear what's happening. So what's sort of your feedback there from that experience? What was really key for you in making sure you know what was going on with the technology, I guess?
Yeah, and I say this as someone who's not an AV person at all. So what I know is more than anything, and it's online and hybrid both, is audio counts more than anything. If your audio doesn't work, you don't have a speech. You know, your visuals can go weird, but if your audio doesn't work, you're done. At a district level, larger room, larger audience, the speakers were needing microphones. As soon as you bring that in, we knew we needed a professional AV setup or a proper bit of AV mixing kit. You're not always going to need that to run a hybrid event, depends on the size of the room, but you've got the issue where you need to get audio from Zoom to a large room and back again. And that two-way audio is the single biggest technical challenge, I think, with hybrid from my non-AV point of view. And one of the things in that, the one I've seen kill more hybrid events than anything else, is the Zoom echo. And the big mistake is the sound has to go out and come in to the same laptop. If you have a laptop over here with the microphone plugged in and a laptop over here with the speaker plugged in, Zoom can't do the noise cancellation that it does. And you get that every time someone talks.
Yeah.
So that's a real killer. You can't run AV off two different laptops. And even at the conference with the professional AV, that was still an issue for us, getting that right. It took the guys, took them till Saturday, I think, before they had that nailed. So that's a really big thing, is the room you're speaking in, and can the audio work in it? And that is something you've got to figure out in advance before the night or the day or whatever of the event. Can you actually get audio so that people at the back can hear, and so that you can feed, whether it's a microphone or whatever, to the Zoom world and back again? You've got to know what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chris. Sam, what about you? Your club is hybrid. So, what have you guys learned? I know for a little bit of inside knowledge, everyone, when the district had their first hybrid executive committee meeting last September, because I am a member of a club in Sussex, I knew that Brighton's venue was probably suitable for that kind of event. So I went along to their meetings, and the members helped me understand how they set up, and I borrowed their equipment. And there was a few things I learned, like you need extra extension leads always. But what other tips, Sam, would you share about making sure you're prepared to set up a hybrid environment?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a steep learning curve. And as I'm sure you found out, Amy, from trying our equipment, that is, although it seems simple, there's always complications with it. With regards to Chris's setup, which is more complicated when you've got a microphone and the speakers in the room as well, we've got a more simple system where there's just a one-way link. So you're either speaking to just with your voice to the room and speaking into a microphone, or there's a speaker going from there, and then it's closed off the link from the room to the speaker. And so then that makes it a lot simpler, but obviously not practical if you've got a huge, big conference room. So I'd definitely say that would be really useful, is actually making it.
Oh, I think the Sam froze on you guys. Maybe we'll get it. Well, maybe we'll get him back in a minute.
See how it was fine when his video froze. It was only when we lost the audio it was a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, I think my experience last year was going back to being prepared in advance and asking in advance really helped. So that really helped me prepare for these hybrid meetings. But actually within my own area level, we had an issue where the area director had a venue pull out on him last minute. The venue was a venue another hybrid club used, so there was a lot of stress about what to do. And a few members of the area council just said, right, we'll just start asking around to see if anyone knows a venue. And actually a contestant found us a venue in about 3 hours. And we had to make some tough decisions in that area contest. So it was a boardroom that had all the tech that we needed. So all we had to do was bring laptops, but it meant we could only have a certain amount of people in the room. So we had to, obviously contestants were absolutely number one. We had contestants online. So the chief judge did work to make sure we had an evens, like the judges were balanced, sergeant of arms, those kind of people. And then we prioritized, members of the club who were like on the committee and things to come in, and then everyone else had to dial in. But everyone, I think, like understood that because it was pulled off really well, the sound wasn't any issue, the visual was really clear. I think everyone kind of thought like, oh, this is, that was great. So ask around, because you'll be surprised. A lot of places now are upgrading their tech as well. So my in-person club Worthing, we've just moved venues. And the venue we went into, we've realized that we could actually host hybrid meetings if we wanted to, because they've brought in new tech since the pandemic, because people are asking for it. So yeah, make sure you ask in advance. I'm sure someone can pull something out of their back pocket to help, even if it's not all the equipment you need. Division directors, I know there's at least one on the call. There is some equipment you can borrow from the district, and all you would need is like a projector at the venue. So make sure you get organized in advance. Now, Chris, what's your feedback on asking for help? How did you help the conference team pull all those functionaries together for district so last minute?
I don't think I can claim too much credit for that. There was a lot, but it was a team effort.
Yeah.
My experience, just contests in general, is I have seen in the past some area and division directors just say, right, I'm going to do everything myself and just organize the entire contest on their own and run it and chair it and do everything. And it looks absolutely exhausting. I've seen them run, back when we used to run big run day-long division events, just seeing a division director at the end of that just going, oh my God, why did I do all that myself? Just get the help. There are people who are keen to learn. Bring them in, teach people to be contest chairs, chief judge, whatever. Get people to mentor them. There's so it's how we all learn, is just getting thrown in. You do the job, and I'll guide you how to do it. And especially when you're working in a sort of multi-mode environment, you've got different things to worry about. You need separate Zoom hosts. You need an in-room Zoom host, which I'll make sure we touch on that. Amy, is just, don't do it all yourself. You only need a handful of people to run a contest, but you need more than one.
Thank you. Grace, do you want to touch on this in-person and online Zoom hosts?
Yeah, I would 100% echo what Chris said about having the in-person Zoom host as well as the online, or at least an in-person Zoom host. It works better always when you've got several people to help. For example, I've been in contests, not too many, where the Zoom host is also having to be the timer, and it does mean that a few things kind of slip through the crack. So it's always actually, and to that point of the timer, if you can, it's best to have your timer in person, if it's a hybrid, with a laptop near them, so they can also make sure that the timing online matches the timing in person as well. So I think those key things are fundamental, and there's several WhatsApp groups actually with people always willing to help. For example, I know there's a group, probably gets quite a views, the evaluators and general general evaluators
Yeah.
and speakers groups. So that's an excellent resource, as well as the Slack channel, of course, for District 91. Excellent places to ask for help.
Yeah. I think one thing I've certainly, we did this at the district level, but I've seen it when it works well in other levels of contests, is the Zoom host that's in the room really needs to be the one that's most in control. So if you've got one in the room and one online, the Zoom host really needs to be calling the shots in the room. So I'm going to use Grace as an example. If you didn't know, we had a very small glitch at the evaluation contest at district, but because Grace noticed what had happened, the Zoom host online had shut the breakout room, and they weren't aware that there were still contestants, so that laptop was feeding into the main room, but Grace picked it up before anyone spoke or anything happened, so it was quickly dealt with. But by having someone in the room, they're obviously more attuned to like what's going on logistically across the board. So yeah, just making sure that in hybrid for division directors and area directors helping them and members, you really use that. Make sure if you've got a couple of Zoom hosts, make sure the one in person is the one that really calls the shots. And I think we also
Just a little bit further. It was one of the big learnings from the conference. We had assumed it was written into the script we developed in advance that the contest chair would just talk directly to the Zoom host from the stage and just say, Zoom host confirm that all the audio is clear, and we do that for each speaker. But it immediately very quickly became apparent that wasn't going to work. Again, that echo issue and just the general audio. So having Grace and Alistair in the room, who would then just convey messages, and they just get a text message from the Zoom host saying, yep, all clear, and then they could just yell to the contest chair, all good.
Yeah.
So having just that extra in-person Zoom host turned out to be incredibly useful.
Yeah.
I would say
and
almost
also
essential.
One thing that I didn't notice until I went back and watched recordings was the chief judge had headset in, and he had his own laptop, so he could really make sure none of the judges had dropped out, that if the sound dropped out, he could also react really quickly and pause the contest to make sure that we weren't invalidating judges because something had gone wrong. So that's another top tip for hybrid meetings or hybrid contests. Keeping as many people in the room who are also connected online is really useful.
Yeah, just emphasize again, you need to know if there's been a break in the audio, either between Zoom and the room. So either the chief judge and or that Zoom host in the room with with headphones on will know immediately there's a problem with the Zoom meeting, and then you can do the contest pause, like you do the online contest. But the chief judge needs to be told that straight away. So the chief judge themselves with the headphone on, or the Zoom host in the room headphones on, so they can pass that message on straight away.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on from contests, I want to talk a little bit about engaging audiences in a hybrid format. Now, I alluded to this before, but training and meetings are a totally different ballgame. And I guess with contests as well, when we have the unofficial contest time, when the contestants are finished and the judges' ballots are being counted, and the contest chair is putting on a good show, entertaining all of the audience, he or she they might be, interviewing a contestant, running a fun table topic session. We need to think about the different ways that's going to look in a hybrid world, if you will, and making sure that those online can be part of the fun. One of the things that I love that Chris did this year is, chief contest chairs, he struck a really good balance of putting on a good show, but not stealing too much thunder from our contestants. And he did some fun things with the contestants. So I'm going to share this little gem. So this is Chris taking what got fondly called a group fee over the conference weekend. And you can see the winner of the international speech contest, Anthony, in the background there with the contestants. So making sure he was included in that group fee just for, having a bit of fun with the audience. So, Sam, I'd love to hear from you on this, actually. Being in that club environment, how do you guys try and engage with both audiences as a hybrid club?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's challenging because it's so easy, particularly if there's more people in the room and you don't have the visibility of the people out of the room to engage them. And it's very easy to forget about them, to pass them over in table topics or doing audience interaction, which simply doesn't work in the same way. And then often you feel quite out of place if you are then included out of the room. And then it feels like everybody's then stopping and staring up at the screen in order to scrutinize you. So it's also can be quite intense as well when you're not in the room. But I think some things that are just really helpful is having formats which are able to work for everyone. So if you've got table topics, making sure that everybody's able to sign up in advance and it's not just picking people at the time and making it accessible from that perspective. We do a lot of things as well as also to take advantage of the online format, and that we use a lot of QR codes in order to be able to get links for the agenda and for voting as well. So we do that mostly by forms when we can, so then we can take advantage of both. But I do think that the engagement is a challenging area, and I think that's still something that we could get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think, Grace, you'll agree that's probably what we learned from this year's conference is we didn't sort of coach the speakers enough to encourage them to engage with the audience as much or at all, really. So hopefully, Steve and his conference team this year can take away that lesson and try and make that happen at the next conference. I know, so Grace, you and I have done a meeting together where you were my Zoom host online. And one of the things I found really works well is if you're facilitating training, and that's what I want, if you're thinking about this at a professional level, to all our audience members, that's what it is. It's training facilitation. So you've really got to plan out how training is going to look in the format in which you're delivering it. So I always find it's really key to get the Zoom host to sort of be aware of how you're going to work. Try and, I've often put like my laptop on a chair. So because often the audience is behind you, right, when you're in a room presenting. So then if you've got that audience in front of you, you can tell you're constantly reminded of like, oh, hey, like they're there. And yeah, you if your Zoom host is comfortable with it, use them as like a bit of a co-host for your training to try and like really facilitate your online people. And it's Toastmasters after all, so if I do that with Grace, it's also giving her an opportunity to practice her speaking skills and not just have Zoom hosts doing all the technical legs. They're getting a chance to practice their communication skills as well. Grace, what have you seen anything work really well for your clubs or in anything you've joined when we're talking about meetings and the training side of hybrid?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to that point, again, I guess I'm just going to echo the technical requirements that are basics and fundamental to have. So if doing training and contests, you really need an external microphone outside of what's on the laptop. Because, for example, I also attend a work Toastmasters group, or I'm part of a work Toastmasters group. We take advantage of meeting rooms, and in the meeting rooms, it obviously comes with like built-in microphones and built-in cameras. So that's really crucial because microphones and speakers like that allow everyone in the room to be heard, as well as the trainer and speaker. But it also means that anyone who joins online can be heard and can be seen on the screens. So that's something that I'd say is key. In terms of places where I've seen it done well, once upon a time when we had access to a club where there was Wi-Fi and a projector, my club, Central London Toastmasters, we ran very well put together hybrid meetings. So we had an external microphone and we had a projector so everyone in the room could see everyone online, but also we had an alternative laptop which showed everyone online, everyone in the room. So when guests, for example, stood up to speak, they could see who they were and our laptop had a very long lead, so that's a key thing as well. So we could point it at the guest who was standing up either at the back of the room or closer to the screen, and that meant that everyone who was speaking could be heard in person as well as online, and it created a nice synergy between the two.
Thank you. Well, we've spoken a little bit about engagement, but what I really found last year with district officer training is that when you're sort of training and you want to engage every member of the audience, no matter what their experience level might be, you really need to plan and facilitate things out, but put some things in place that are going to help you. So I saw this done really well by our immediate past club growth director, actually. She asked more experienced district leaders to sort of, bring your laptop, dial in, be a chat master, so that we could engage with the online officers. They really felt they were getting support. And we, she had consulted a couple of people about how to go about using different tools. And she really made that commitment as well to calling out the audience and saying, right, if you're in person in the room, let's all make sure that we get up and come to the speaker, because we didn't always have the sound that would mean that someone at the back of the room who stands up and asks a question during training, it meant the online people, especially if they were quite quietly spoken, couldn't hear them. So yeah, it was about planning together and sort of asking the training participants to help. I think especially in the Toastmasters environment, like that is our culture, isn't it? We all want to help each other learn, so we're more than willing to do that. I'm very aware that in real life that might not be quite the same. But one thing I think is absolutely influential is if you project that, then it is contagious, I think. So if you take it away and you're excited, if you're doing it in a professional environment, people will come around. You just have to put a big smile on and push them along, if you will. I think we've about covered everything. I want to do a quick little wrap up and maybe we can take some questions. I just want to say a really big thank you to Chris and Grace and Sam for coming along to support this webinar. There's also been some district leaders in the background supporting with pulling updated resources together for Steve to make sure that we've got updated online contests and hybrid resources on the website in the next week or two. So that includes Alistair Marston, Janet Elkemer, Demi Williams and Dan McGill, who've all been giving feedback to contribute. But I think it's right that we call out some of the sort of legacy people that have been around the last few years. So the last couple of years, we've had 2 district chief judges, Chris Walker and Neil Coleman, and they worked really hard to put resources together, which we're still using as a district. So big thanks to them. People like Mo, who's our club growth director this year. If you're not aware, he had a whole hybrid committee, and there is a plethora of videos about hybrid and interviews with clubs and members who were really pioneering that on the District 91 YouTube channel. So we'll make sure there's some more links to those on the updated contest page, because as I mentioned before, this is about experiential learning, and there's so many members that are really putting in a lot of effort to create these resources. So please go out there and find them and make it happen and help your district leaders make hybrid happen at division and district level this year. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you've got any questions, we've got 10 more minutes, so please feel free to unmute and join in. Thank you. No questions?
People think of
thank
questions.
you, Carol.
Whilst people think of questions, I was just going to echo that hopefully in the near future there will be some Zoom training. So anyone who wants to expand their skills and become a Zoom host, I'm sure there will be some training on the horizon.
Did you hear that, Steve? I think that was a commitment from Grace.
I think it was. I've already written it down, and I think it's a great idea. Watch this space and watch your email box, Grace.
Yeah. I think as well, for members that have been around, the last few years, we've got a lot of new members in the district. Like, we're growing back again. and new members haven't had the hecticness of going online. So let's empower all of them to, you know, also pick up this skill, which is really useful in very different environments. And, you know, let's give a bit of a break to some of the Zoom hosts that got us through the first couple of years of the pandemic.
Can I do a quick contest chair summary wrap up?
Sure.
I love being a contest chair for many reasons. You get to have the undivided attention of the room, which is brilliant. You get to talk for loads of times, which is even better. And you get to follow a clear process, which just really appeals to me. But first and foremost, the fundamental goal of a contest chair is to run a contest that is as fair as possible for every single contestant. And that's where running a clear process. So every contestant is introduced the same way. You don't make any comments on the speeches. You give everyone the same opportunity. With the hybrid script, that's what we've tried to do. So we've tried to kind of harmonize the introductions of online versus in person and making sure everybody gets a sound check. So a big part of that fairness aspect is making sure that when everybody starts speaking, as much as is within your ability, everyone's sound is functioning both online and in the room. So if you take only one thing away, then you haven't been paying attention. But if you take only one thing away, it's give each speaker a sound check before they speak and make sure, again, that's where that interface person who is listening to the Zoom meeting and can let the contest chair know wherever they are, yes, the audio is clear, and follow a script.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Well, we haven't got any questions. We've got some thank yous. Thank you so much, everyone that's dialed in this evening.
Carol's waving.
Oh, hi, Carol.
Hi. Quick question. I want to share a practice that we use in District 59 for the judges' ballot. We use Google Forms.
Mm-hmm.
It goes so quickly, it's reliable and saves a lot of time, counting the ballots. Is this something that you might consider in this district?
That is a consideration for Mr. Program Quality Director, I believe. Thank you for sharing, Carol.
Yeah, it definitely looking to experiment if things work and if things are the right thing to do. I think what we need to do is probably just take some guidance from World HQ speech contest team to ensure that actually it's in keeping with the spirit of the rules. Because even though it's happening in other districts, I wouldn't like there to be an objection raised by a contestant or somebody to then fall into problems. So providing we know it's effectively been signed off by TMI, especially, I'm less nervous about the other contest. If it's the international speech contest, we need to be absolutely certain that there's no challenges there. But certainly want to take away, Carol, thank you very much for raising.
Thank you, Steve.
I'd echo that. Google Forms is great, and it's certainly something we use. So yeah, great point, Carol.
What I would just remind everyone, which I learnt, we did club officer training in July. We did a corporate COT sessions, and I used a Jamboard, which is part of the Google Workspace. But because it was corporate COT, the guys from Microsoft and NatWest and a few of those other companies that only use Microsoft could not access the Jamboard. So just be a little bit mindful, some judges, if they're using work laptops, that could be a problem that you might find will crop up. So they won't be able to use that facility. Yeah. But you can do Microsoft Forms, I think.
Cool.
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. It is recorded, so an edited version will go onto the website in due time, so you can catch up or recommend it to anyone that's organising a contest or wants to learn more about hybrid. And
brilliant stuff. And can I just say, as a final comment, Amy, thank you very much indeed for your leadership in pulling this together and your excellent hosting skills. Thank you for your continued service to District 91. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Steve.